Welcome to Medicine, Motherhood, and Missions, the podcast where real life meets big dreams. I'm Johanna, your host, and every episode will dive into inspiring stories from PAs, doctors, and professionals who are also dreamers and mission-driven changemakers. From the hospital halls to the hearts of our homes, and even into communities across the world, we'll laugh, learn, and uncover the challenges, triumphs, and everything in between as we see life through each other's perspectives. Looking for more joy and balance in your career? Don't miss our free guide, How to Be a Fulfilled Provider. Your quick boost of encouragement with tips to help you thrive while juggling all your hats you wear. And if you've got little dreamers at home, check out Little Evie's Big Dreams on Amazon. These stories are meant to spark imagination, courage, and kindness, perfect for bedtime or anytime. Follow along as Evie, a little Sri Lankan girl, brings joy and creativity to her community while daring to dream big. This podcast is also brought to you with love by the Ephraim Foundation International, because empowering children and families in rural Sri Lanka isn't just charity, it's continuing a legacy of hope and creating futures full of possibilities. So grab your cup of coffee or tea, settle in, and get ready for uplifting conversations that will leave you inspired and equipped to make a greater impact. Let's jump in. Welcome back to Medicine, Motherhood, and Missions, the podcast for women who are called to heal, called to nurture, and called to go. I'm so glad you're here today. Colossians 3:23 says, "Whatever you do, work at it with all your heart, as working for the Lord, not for human masters." That verse sounds simple until you're post-call, running on 3 hours of sleep, trying to be present for your kids, and wondering if any of it is actually making a difference for the kingdom. Here's what I know about women in this community. You are leaders, not just in title, but in the truest sense of the word. And great leaders aren't the ones who never face destruction. They're the ones who have a vision so strong, so anchored in God, that it carries them through the destruction. They stop looking at the pain and they start looking up. That's exactly what today's conversation is about. My guest is Dr. Ashley Tauriac, a physician, speaker, and author who has spent over a decade studying and teaching of the intersection of faith and professional life. She trained at Vanderbilt, survived bacterial meningitis during her medical journey, has served as a pediatrician, led international medical mission trips, and currently works with newborns and teaches at Vanderbilt Medical School. Her book, In Between the Lines of Faith and Work, is an honest, practical, and deeply encouraging read for anyone learning to find beauty in the mundane, rest in God in the middle of the grind, and carry their faith into every corner of their calling, the clinic, the home, and the mission field. Dr. Tauriac, welcome to Medicine, Motherhood, and Missions. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Thanks for the great introduction, too.
Yeah, I used some of the words from your book, some of the phrases that you write about, and I feel that's so powerful, and I hope everyone does take the time to read the book. But in the meantime, we can get a snippet of her journey, your journey, and tell us, first of all, the book follows your journey as a medical student to physician. What made you decide to put that story into writing, and who did you hope most would read it?
Yeah, the book was not actually planned, I guess. I did, when I was younger, did think it would be cool if I could one day write a book. But essentially at the time, I was doing a lot of missions work. And when I would get back to the US, I wanted to be able to give something to the people who were on the trip with us to kind of take with them and really take what they learned on the trip and incorporate it into regular life, I think. That was a large part of how I started writing it. And so we were taking a lot of medical students and nursing students at the time. So I just wrote what I knew, and I had, it hadn't been that long since I graduated. So I just wrote about my journey through college, med school, and residency. There's lots of ups and downs, and it's sometimes it's easy to see God, and sometimes you kind of feel like you're out there alone, and kind of just tried to write about that pull and that tension, and kind of give them some examples of what it looked like when God did show up, and some frustrations that I was sure people would relate to.
Yeah, because I think a lot of people, we go on these, trips where we start out, and sometimes when we face the obstacles that come our way, it's nice to have someone who may have experienced all of that beforehand and hear from their story and their journey and what took them through. And I think a lot of that is what is in your book, is what allowed you to, keep pushing through despite the difficulties and things that you faced, right?
Yeah, and
Um,
yeah, had a lot of
Go ahead.
great
Yeah.
encouragement along the way, and so tried to put some of that in
Yeah.
there as well, right? Other people helped me keep going a lot, and that said, if you can find that, then make sure you fight for it. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. What took you to become a doctor and start the journey of medicine in the first place?
Yeah, since I was a kid, I really thought the human body was really incredible. It's so
Mhm.
detailed and so interesting that it basically kind of fixes itself. And I thought that was just amazing and just loved my doctor growing up. My pediatrician was so great. And so was interested in it from the time I was pretty young. I did think about some other things along the way, but mostly just wanted to be a doctor pretty much the whole time. And so worked hard to kind of see if I could get it done. I'm the only doctor in my family. So it was yeah, lots of ups and downs, I guess, on that part as well, but was able to get into a good school and
Mhm.
start the fun journey of medicine. Not hard work at all.
That's funny because I heard some reel today that popped up, and MD, he's, I guess, just finished training or something. And he's like, I've heard people say they make medical school like way too hard, or not many people are wanting to become physicians, or not many people are getting into the programs, and we have a physician shortage. And then he goes on to list like all the difficulties and all the things that it takes to even get to the first step and the second step, and, get through. And the process is hard, and it's hard for a reason, right? Because you have to know what you're doing
Yes, you have a
and
lot of power.
prove that you want to actually go through this. Because actually, just even becoming a doctor, the process to get there is hard. But then actually working as a doctor may be even harder sometimes, because I think that's where our conversation goes into a little deeper, because your life revolves in a way around work. And it's kind of like, how do we fit everything else, the other spokes on the wheel, to fit the career in a way sometimes, right? And I mean, going into a little bit of the beginning of your difficulties with facing the bacterial meningitis when you were training at Vanderbilt, tell us a little bit about that season in your life, and what was it like going through in your mind spiritually as well as professionally?
Yeah. I mean, I think the good thing about school, I would say, is that my life was pretty simple, right? It was go to school
Mhm.
and study, and that was pretty much it. I wasn't married, I didn't have kids. Like, those were my only requirements. And I think the problem with meningitis was it added on like 50 other things I had to start to juggle. And so, yes, it did feel like just a lot was going on. But essentially, the week of graduation from med school, I thought I had a bad cold. I just had a cough and kept not feeling good and was just going about all of our parties and things like that. And it just got worse and worse. And 4 days, I guess, after graduation, ended up missing an appointment I was supposed to be at, and finally took myself to the hospital and was like, I don't know what's wrong with me, but something's not right here. Got this
Yeah.
horrible headache, and I don't usually sleep through appointments. Something's wrong.
Yeah.
So ended up in the hospital for a couple of weeks, got treated for meningitis, and then really did struggle with just cognitive dysfunction. I guess after it was basically like I had a concussion for about a year and a half, I think is the way that I would describe it. So got pulled off work for a while, had to get cognitive testing to be cleared to go back to work. So there was all these kind of obstacles, but when I finally did start working, it really was it was juggling the medicine part, juggling the patient's part. But then I had all these financial responsibilities, right? I had $80,000 worth of medical bills, right?
Mhm.
And didn't have a job for a while there. And then trying to figure out how to get to my appointments. And they put me in speech therapy. And I had like 40 something doctor's appointments during intern year. And so I have to
Oh
go
my
to the
gosh.
appointments, other guys, they think I'm like a bad patient or something. And so
Yeah.
and then everyone keeps saying like, oh, you need to sleep well, you need to eat well, and all of these different things. And it became this
Mhm,
crazy place of, I don't know how I'm supposed to juggle all of this, right? I'm just overwhelmed with what I am trying to juggle. And then
mhm,
the faith aspect of it was just a whole
mhm,
nother level because I didn't even know how to I didn't know I was still kind of angry at God, right? Like I think I'd been a
mhm,
faithful Christian my whole life and like what was this random, punishment that I was going through? Like did I do something wrong? Like why did God not want me to be a doctor? Like
mhm,
why was this so difficult and why did I get another frustration added on top of something that was already difficult? And so yeah, I think a lot of I don't know that it was ever done well, like juggling all of these different things. I guess it's just, um, I was able to see it clearly for the first time when people are like, life is complicated and being an adult and blah, 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 blah. Blah. Like, yeah, it really, it really is trying to juggle anything. Just one little thing
yeah,
can go wrong and just mess up your whole week. And trying to still
mhm.
be excellent and still do things well in spite of those hiccups and stressors and problems can be quite overwhelming for sure.
Yeah, I know. It's interesting how some people are like, "Get some rest," and you're like, "I have a million things to do." And you were in residency at the time, right? And or post-residency, and, like, how do you even do that? And then you mentioned you were angry at God. Can you expand a little bit about that? Can in your faith journey a little bit? Like, how did that
Yeah.
impact?
Yeah. I mean, I think when I very first got out of the hospital, I was fine. I was like, oh, trials come to make you strong and throwing all these like Christianese things out. But when I got pulled off work and then was actually looking at what if I can't ever finish this job? Like, what if I can't ever work
Mhm,
as a doctor? That's when I really started getting frustrated and more angry at God. And I think what was so beautiful about that year or that time of my life was I finally got honest with God, right? I wasn't all
mhm,
that good at being honest with myself, but I definitely wasn't all that good at being honest with God. And that year, I didn't have any more pretense or like false smiles. I would just
mhm,
fall apart every day, right? I'd be like, God, this is too hard. It's too much. Like, either you need to help me or fix something, or I'm giving up on you. And we're walking out. Like, I really was just harsh and probably inappropriate sometimes, I think. Even though in my life, like with relationships with other people, when I would fall apart like
mhm,
that, people were getting tired of me. They were tired of me complaining all the time and tired of me being upset or crying, but God never did. And I think that
mhm,
was such a beautiful thing to see that even though like people do sometimes just not support you the way that you hope or not give you everything that you need. But God really never did fail me and really just kept somehow loving me and somehow giving me just tiny little bits of hope or possibility or, you know, a little bit of sunlight, just like these tiny little
yeah.
things that would fix what seemed like an impossible situation, just to remind me he was still there. And that I think was the biggest thing that I needed to learn that it wasn't about me being perfect, but about me just being honest and trusting God.
I think that's, like, what faith is, right? Because do you think that that is what allowed you to really understand why you even believed in God and why you had this faith in God? Because growing up, you were a Christian, right?
It was,
And because obviously something changed. And can you describe a little bit about like whether or not that kind of actually was your shifting point of your solidification with your faith?
yeah. I mean, I guess I had been through a couple of things that were frustrating over the years as a kid, but never
Mhm,
something that was so complicated and so long, right? It wasn't like I had
mhm,
meningitis one day and the next day everything was fine. It was, it's a life sentence. You might have brain damage for the next 10 years, is what I was told. And so it really became more of like actually having to trust God like every day, I think became much more real to me. Sometimes when I was younger, going to church once really would last several days or several weeks or what have you. That like encouragement was kind of all I needed to get through the level of work I was doing or the level of faith I was walking out. But when I got sick, it became I need God every hour. It really came to a whole nother level of me praying and me spending time with God and it wasn't hours on end. It was 3 seconds. God, I need your help, right? Like that was it.
Mhm.
But it became so much more real for me because it was all day long and it was incorporated into my regular life. I did definitely struggle and wonder if this was maybe I'm just been believing the wrong thing this whole time and God isn't real. I definitely went through that. What really helped me, I think, was kind of I had a lot of journals and things. And so going back through journals and seeing examples of how God had shown up in my life. And I finally one day was like, okay, even if God never does another thing for me or never answers a single other prayer, I've got so much evidence of him these last 20 years. I can't sit here and pretend like he's not real. And so it definitely was a fight. It wasn't quite as simple as I'm making it sound. But yeah, it was a great thing to see God in a whole new way and because I had to. And I think that it's harsh because I think it's a beautiful thing that meningitis made me more humble. It like humbled me because I couldn't stand on my own strengths and my own perfectionism and my own hard work. And I think it was a big win when it's all said and done because being able to say that we're limited is such a huge win at being able to see God in a whole nother way and being able to even just experience him in a whole nother way. So it wasn't enjoyable, but it was necessary, I guess.
Yeah, because you're at a point where you're independent, you're working towards these huge dreams that determine the direction of your entire life. And then this comes and totally sidetracks everything. It's interesting how you say it helped you learn to trust in God and whether or not God answered any other future ask or anything, this helped you kind of realize that God was real. Because sometimes I feel we grow up thinking God is a genie in a bottle, kind of, because our prayers are so, God, help me do this today. God, will you help this? Will you do this? You know, help me, help me, right? And it's all about us. And it ends up being all about what can be done for us in our daily life or in whatever happens to us, that we don't understand who God is in order to be able to trust him when we actually face those big difficulties, right? And I think when we face those difficulties is when, you know, real choice is whether we go down the route of, okay, I see how God is real, or I don't see God. And, you know, we end up missing out or not being able to open our eyes to see what that faith really evolved into or could evolve into,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. I have to really thank my one of the pastors ended up doing a Bible study right around this time when I was
Mhm.
questioning life itself, I guess, and
Yeah.
really helped me see how much all of my focus was on being sick and all of it was like this is the problem. This is all I can think about and all I can do. And until I let go of that obsession, and I wasn't really going to be able to serve anyone else well, and wasn't ever going to be able to see how God had me in a specific place for a reason, right? Not just for my own benefit, but for what I could do and learn and help others. And God cares about what we're doing. Not that He wants us suffering, but sometimes He wants us to just practice like keeping our eyes on Him and not
Mhm.
on the problem, however overwhelming it may feel. Not that He doesn't want us to be honest about it. Like I said, I was
Yeah.
crying all the time, but yeah, wants us to not make that the whole focus of our life so that we can't see anything else.
Mhm. Yeah. It's not like we obfuscate the difficulties or issues that we're facing. We acknowledge them. We're not turning a blind eye to the major problems that we are going through in those like you were going through in those difficult situations. But it's acknowledging and accepting, and then putting our faith in something greater that we hold on to, or that's how I feel like when I've in the difficult things that we've faced as our in our family, and things like that. It's easy. It would be easy to focus on the problem and feel forgotten, feel lost, feel like there's how am I going to get out of this? And what's the hope? Is there hope? And I think that's what it comes down to, because sometimes we can get bogged down in, is there hope for tomorrow? Is there a life tomorrow? Is there something to look forward to? And we have to change our mindset, or I had to change, I had to be able to change my own mindset to be, I gotta focus on something simple to be grateful for, and know that, hey, I'm grateful because I think that is God showing his mercy in my life today, right? And it's not easy to change your mindset and think like that, um, even though you're acknowledging the difficulties you're facing. So going back to the book and the title, In Between the Lines, it's evocative. What does living in between the lines actually feel like day to day, especially in medicine?
Yeah. I think I got the idea because when I was a kid growing up as a Christian, it seemed like everything was very black or white. Like there were clear right and wrong, clear like
Mhm,
yes or no. Everything seemed so simple. And then
mhm.
gosh, going into the hospital and facing, life or death conversations and like treatment options and all of these
Yeah.
crazy things that are just really not simple. They're quite a bit more
Mhm,
complicated. And what it seemed like a lot, especially in medical school, was that you picked one or the other. You either picked your faith or you picked science and medicine. Like they were two
mhm,
on complete opposite spectrums and they didn't go together at all. It felt like that's what a lot of mentors and professors and stuff were trying to suggest, that believing in God didn't even make sense and we need to check the science, and that's really all that matters. So I loved the concept of like, well, we can put them on opposite extremes, but that's not really what God asks us to do. And that's not really what God calls us to live. Either we can pick one extreme or the other, but really, I think the better thing is to kind of bring them together. And I think that's where God is able to really meet us and help us through the unknowns and weird parts and complications that don't have a clear answer,
mhm.
and really show up in a great way. And so I think we're called to, I think we're very good at making things extreme. But I think we're called to really kind of find a better balance and like a kind of middle ground. And that's harder to do sometimes, right? Like if you think about social media, right? Like people love just to be controversial. And I'm just going to say the opposite of whatever. Right. It's kind of like
Yeah.
the thing now, but I think sometimes God asks us to stand for something a little bit different, and that's kind of what He was showing me through my journey. So, thought that would be a great way to put it, in between the lines of faith and work.
Yeah. Because you talk about, yeah, as you said, choice between being an excellent Christian or an excellent physician, and you're kind of navigating that tension. And how did you how did you go through that? Like, how did you differentiate that, or, allow that to blend and mesh together?
I think it was a lot of just kind of seeing how things didn't work, right? Like just kind of seeing the
Mhm,
bad examples of it is literally how it started. I was asked to do a Bible study with some friends, and we ended up doing a Bible study for, it was mostly grad students and young adults. And everybody was having a hard time with
mhm,
faith at work. Like we were just various different ways. But so we started just looking for examples. Somebody out there must be talking about this, for books and stories and pastors and things like that. And most of the things we found were just kind of ridiculous. Like, all you got to do is, read your Bible more than you read your textbook. And we're like, no, that's well,
Yeah.
you can't study enough in the day and read your Bible more than that. Like, that's going to be a
Yeah.
really bad physician. Maybe you'd be a good Christian,
Yeah.
but yeah, so we just, I mean, everything was so extreme, I guess. And
Mhm.
the few testimonies that we did find where people either in our church or what have you were incorporating God into their workplace and incorporating God into their studies and stuff, they were never that extreme. They were really just
Mhm.
small examples of how they just, you know, over time asked God in more and more, invited God in more and more to a place where far too often we don't even expect him to want to be. So that I think was the key, right? Not like trying to spend more hours at church or what have you, but really
Mhm.
trying to invite God into whatever I was doing at the time. And being able to see the testimonies and the good things that came from that, I think kind of
Mhm.
spurred me and the other and my friends on.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, we tend to compartmentalize our faith in certain aspects of our life or, church on Sunday or Bible study or whatever. And then during the week, we're just medicine or work or whatever. But, you mentioned you met some mentors and examples who lived out their faith somehow. How do we live out our faith or be able to navigate that faith in medicine or as, evidence-based clinicians,
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah, I mean, I think it looks a little bit different for everyone. Just like if
Mhm,
I say this person is a really good doctor, that actually means different things. Like sometimes it means the
mhm,
person is really good at one-on-one discussions and has like this great personality. Sometimes it means they're like really skilled at like a procedure or something that they're doing. Sometimes it means they're
mhm,
really unique in the way that they process and like research and things like that. And all of those things mean they're still excellent and still great doctors and still worth emulating. They're just each using the individual skills that they have. And I think that's a great way to think about faith in the workplace. It doesn't necessarily look the same for everyone. Part
mhm,
of it is God being able to just help you with what he's already gifted you to do. And I think
mhm,
that's how we think about it when we're looking at other people. Like we all
mhm.
know like a anointed pastor or an anointed
Yeah,
worship leader or something like that. And we say, like, oh, God is, really gifted them. And yes, they have this ability, this excellence that they bring. And then
mhm,
there's this other part that God adds on top that kind of just will change an entire meeting or service, right?
mhm.
And so
Yeah,
that I think would be the win of being able to see God in our workplace, that
yeah,
we bring this gift that's, not quite perfect, but is the best that I've got to offer. And God puts something else on top of it. And through that is able to really change lives and create new opportunities and new movement and hopefully new ideas and innovations and
yeah,
movements within medicine or within the healthcare system and all kinds of things. But I think when we expect it just looks like someone, yeah, I don't know, bringing cupcakes with cross-covered sprinkles on them and define that as faith at work, then we've kind of lost what God is
yeah,
truly capable of, right?
yeah, yeah. I think, like, for me, I mean, we go to work where it's finding those moments when, like, for example, I was seeing a patient one day and she was sitting there. I'd never met her before. I just went in to check on her and she started telling me about how I'm so healthy and it, yet I'm old. And that's such a scary place to be. And I was so confused. I was like, what does this mean? You're so healthy, yet you're old and you're stuck here. What does that mean? Um, because I was like, there is some health issues there. And then as she started talking, she was like, I, I had to give up my house. My family sold my house. My family sold my car. And now I'm in this, assisted living facility. Everything my husband and I worked for is gone. Our whole life, we worked so hard to earn these things and have our own place. And he's gone. My life is gone. No one's here. And I'm healthy, but I'm alone, and I, you know, understood what her pain was. And she had been listening to some Christian stuff before. So I kind of gathered she had some Christian faith. So for me, because she had already had that like open door of having a Christian channel on her TV, I was like, hey, are you a Christian? Can I pray for you? And even though I was there to check on her medical needs and we discussed all that, looked at, vitals and medicines and whatnot. But I ended it by saying, can I pray for you? I see your pain. I see you not just as a patient with medical issues. I see you as a person who is hurting. And I feel like sometimes that is living faith in our workplaces, in our everyday life, is being able to, it's not just, "Oh, we don't believe in medicine. We're, holy healers or whatever." That's all nonsense. It's not that.
Another level.
It's seeing the people, the person, and we can do that no matter who you are, what you believe in. It's seeing that person and their spiritual need, their physical need, their emotional need at that time.
Yeah. I love using the example of God glasses. Like if we put on our God
Mhm.
glasses and just give ourselves the opportunity to see what God sees in that
Yeah.
moment and that patient and that encounter and that family member,
Mhm.
even. Because we've got one
Mhm.
way of thinking about things, but sometimes God sees something entirely different that we wouldn't have otherwise even thought about. And sometimes
Yeah.
we're not even thinking about how depressed or how lonely someone's feeling,
Mhm.
but God would know
Yeah.
and would want
Mhm.
us to speak into that and love on them. That's beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah. And you write about like organic evangelism, and I feel that might be an example of it, but
Yeah.
just being present and available to people around you. Can you share a moment in your medical career where your faith showed up in a way you didn't plan?
Yeah, well, I'm gonna share the opposite because I think you just did a great example of of something that sounds faithful and sounds like what you'd expect, but I've got an example that's kind of off the chart. No, it's just a little bit strange. So I had a patient, let's see, when I was in residency, we had a patient that was coming in and it was a chronic patient. So he had chronic issues. He had been admitted to the hospital regularly and knew exactly what was going to be involved for this hospitalization. It's always the same procedure. But he was coming in really late that day. Most of the time, these chronic patients are admitted early in the morning. And so I wanted to change things up. And I wanted to show him that I didn't just think he was, you know, patient number 20 on my list. And
Mhm.
so I decided to lie, which is crazy, but it just came to mind. And I was like, you know what? This is what we're going to do. So I walked into the room and I said, hey, I know normally you would be able to get dinner and just, sit and watch TV, but we've changed it up entirely. So, what we're going to do
Mhm.
is we're going to starve you for the next few days. We've got several really painful procedures that are coming, just new things that we're going to be doing. And it's gonna be rough, but she'll be fine. Don't worry about it. And I just held that for just a moment. And the kid starts freaking out. He's a teenage boy and he's like, what do you mean? Painful procedures? What?
Oh,
And then finally I just laughed and I was like, no, 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 I'm kidding. Like that is all a
yeah.
joke. I am just being harsh. Nothing like that is happening. And he
Mhm.
started laughing, right? And I
Yeah.
just wanted to remind him that,
Mhm.
like, he's not just a thing on my list of things to do, but I saw him as a person. And more than that, I saw him as a person who probably needed to smile because I knew
Yeah.
why he was getting to the hospital late that day.
Mhm.
And it was
Yeah.
because his mom had just passed away. And yeah, it was awful. And so he had spent the day at her funeral and then for the first
Yeah.
time was going to be coming to the hospital by himself
Mhm.
without her. And I just
Mhm.
wanted to give him something to break up
Yeah.
the pain and the frustration of the day. And
Yeah.
to be fair, that's not what I would normally do to a patient. I've never lied like that to anyone else. But
Yeah.
it was just, I call it a thought from God that was like, this is what you need to do. And we became really good friends and kind of stayed joking with each other during the rest of the hospitalization. But it was
Yeah.
a weird way to love on him, but that
Mhm.
was the best way I could think of in that moment.
Yeah.
And to just, shake things up a little bit, I guess. But
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
everybody would get it, but usually a teenage boy can kind of roll with
Yeah.
with that level of silliness. So
Yeah.
it worked
Yeah.
well.
It's the human connection.
Yeah.
It's that human connection, right? Just
Yeah.
finding that connection with somebody else. And, as you say, it depends, it's changes per patient to patient or person to
Yeah.
person. And it's that single human connection that makes a difference. Yeah. And going back to your book again, so you also talk about maybe balance, the danger of going too far in either direction. And what extremes do you see physician women failing or falling into that most often?
It's so easy to get into extremes, especially in medicine,
Mhm.
because we're so many places we fail ourselves, right? We're so good at caring
Mhm.
for patients and have this is the plan and this is the sleep schedule and this is the eating schedule. We have this plan for patients and then don't even remotely go do any of that for ourselves. Like we're on some other level that doesn't need regular life things. So it's really easy to I think push yourself into an extreme on just basic health things. Really, also just trying to prove ourselves in medicine, right? I
Mhm.
think the number of times in the last few years that I walked into a room, introduced myself as the doctor, and then was immediately called the nurse was
Mhm.
just quite incredible, right?
Yeah.
So constantly trying to prove ourselves and make sure that we're respected and heard and listened
Mhm.
to. And sometimes we kind of push farther than we really need to in order to get those points across and make sure that people don't ignore us or don't, uh, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then the other thing I kept thinking about when I was reading that question from you was the Proverbs 31 woman. I think that
Mhm.
was always such an overwhelming passage to me, right? Like she's literally
Mhm.
like perfect on every level and just
Mhm.
I don't know. I mean, it's great to have something to aim for, but that doesn't seem remotely
Mhm.
attainable in any way, shape, or form. And
Yeah.
so I don't know. So we can push ourselves to these extremes, even just from a Christian perspective, being like, and now I
Mhm.
need to go serve over here, and now I need to go read my
Mhm.
Bible more, and now I need to go do this more. And so I'd say it's not hard, I think, to push ourselves into extremes. And
Mhm.
part of what's helped me is I really have to pull myself back from works mentality, right? Like it's so
Mhm.
easy to be like, if I do this, then I get this, or if I work harder, then things go better. And I think
Yeah.
remembering that, one, God is a God of miracles and
Mhm.
it's not that hard for him. He can
Yeah.
restore things that we thought were lost or fix things that seem impossible.
Yeah.
And then just remembering that God sees what we do give and
Mhm.
is blessed and loves that, right? Like he's not demanding that we be perfect. He's
Yeah.
is calling us to another level if we'll, trust that he has good things in mind for us even through all the hard expectations. So yeah,
Yeah.
that's kind of all over the place, but those are the things that were kind of on the top of my mind.
Yeah, yeah. Because, I mean, first of all, burnout comes to mind when we push ourselves to extremes. And it's interesting because we can get so focused on trying to prove ourselves, and do everything and be everything, and then end up failing because we're just so burned out. And it's so interesting that you pointed out that as Christians, we can do that too, because that is so true. Because I feel like sometimes as Christians, you're like, we have to be perfect because we have a perfect faith, or our faith is supposed to be perfected in us. What does that even mean? It's not about ourselves that is, perfect, and our lives are going to be perfect and we can't face anything difficult. We can't, just even if we acknowledge the difficulties in our life, oh, that's not good because we're not having faith. We're not, expounding on our faith because we're using our words to describe that we're having difficulties, right? I mean, that sometimes can happen, but it's not about that. It's finding rest and being able to rest in Christ, especially as, Christians. We forget about that abiding in him and resting in him. And it's okay to say no. It's okay to acknowledge our difficulties because we need to in order to accept them, to take responsibility and not just blame the devil or blame, the enemy sometimes if something is not going right in our life. And then we lose out on, the mindset changes, the life that we can live if we're not making the appropriate changes in our lives to live better and be healthy.
Right.
So,
Reasonable. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, I mean,
yeah.
I think when I got sick, I got a lot of that. Some Christians were very understanding and others were
Mhm.
like, "Why aren't you happy? The joy of the Lord is your strength." And I'm like, "No,
Right.
I'm suffering and that's just where I
Yeah.
honestly am." But it was hard
Mhm.
to even let myself get there, right? Because it didn't seem Christian enough.
Right.
It didn't seem faithful enough.
Mhm.
But thankfully, like I said, God respected the fact that I am not him and that I do have emotions
Yeah,
and I do get
exactly.
frustrated. And God's not afraid of our failures or our
Mhm.
disappointments or our bad
Yeah.
days.
Yeah. He's there for us in the good and the bad. He'll never leave us nor forsake us when we go through those things. That's life. But we have a hope, and we can only see that hope if we, are able to find those moments of gratitude towards his faithfulness, not our faithfulness, which is not always perfect. I mean, there's a level of, are meeting him, and doing, but it's not all about work.
Yeah.
It's trust.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very much a partnership because we do have to
Mhm.
bring our best, but what we bring
Yeah.
is not perfect. But when
Mhm.
you mix it with what God is bringing, then it is perfect. And
Yeah.
remembering that partnership is so key that it's not all on our
Yeah.
shoulders.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. And so tell us a little bit about, I wanted to jump around here to the missions because I don't want to miss out on some of those experiences. Sometimes it's like this extra thing, or sometimes we feel like, are we really doing anything worthwhile going on a missions trip? What has your experience with missions been like, and what has it added to your life? What do you feel like it is doing for the people you go and minister to or work with?
Yeah, missions was a lot. I think, yeah, it's all the extremes again, I guess. But yeah, when I finished residency, I was quite tired and went to my pastor and said, "Okay, I'm a doctor. I did that. I'm done. I will go anywhere in the world and help you. I'm sure you know of somebody that needs help. I'm just done with this medicine thing." And thankfully, he said, "No, you didn't fight through all of that to just leave medicine now." And so what he did was kind of created this medical missions portion of some trips that we were doing, of short-term trips that they were doing. And I worked part-time as a doctor and part-time for the church planning trips for a couple of years, which I really enjoyed. I think missions are a little bit, they can be frustrating. They do have some rough sides, rough edges, especially short-term missions trips. Like, are we really making things better? What can you really accomplish in 10 short days? And yeah, there are a lot of frustrations, I guess, with them. But I think the part that I enjoyed the most, we would coordinate with whatever church we were going to abroad and really just talk through what's the best way we can serve you in this short trip that we're going to take. And so I think that was the best we could offer, again, given the short commitment. And so sometimes that was medical and sometimes it wasn't. But I think what was most helpful for me to start with was just being on a trip and being reminded. Really, what it reminded me was that God saw me. I think when I'm in the United States, sometimes I feel like some kind of weird freak because I have all these interests that don't really make sense. But when you get me on a mission trip, suddenly I'm like the person that you needed for everything. And so somebody on the team gets sick, and I'm like, oh, it's so cool. I'm a doctor. And they're like, well, we had this person that was supposed to speak, and they're out. It's like, oh, fine, I can speak. I've got you. And oh, the worship pastor is out sick. We need somebody else to sing. And I'm like, oh, no problems. I can come help you. And so it really was a funny thing, but I think it was so encouraging to me to be like,
Mhm.
okay, so God really can bring all of my gifts together in one place, right? Like, I wasn't created to be weird. Like, God really did have a plan for this.
Mhm.
And so that was a lot of fun for me to see personally. And I think really just helped give me like vision and for long term and for just get some energy, I guess, to keep going after such a
Yeah.
rough residency. But what I really came to love about trips was being able to take people out of their comfort zone. And so we would start
Mhm.
taking a bunch of medical students and nursing students. And when you get people out of their comfort zone, they tend to be a little bit more receptive to God and a little bit more humble. And so I think it would really push people's faith in a lot of ways. We would, kind of have the medical component of the trip. And then we also made everybody on the trip do evangelism. Like, they'd go down to a college and ask people about if they believed in God and different things like that. And so it was a great way to see God move in
Yeah.
both aspects of life and really kind of challenge
Yeah.
people to think a little bit differently about what care and what faith can look like.
Yeah.
And yeah, I remember one of the students said, if it's this easy to tell someone about God in another country, in another language, how easy would it be to tell someone in my class about God? And so I think
Mhm.
that was the big win for me, being able to take people again out of their comfort zone and then push them back to the US and say, how can we change things here now that you know
Right.
that God does care about what you're doing and you can see
Mhm.
evidence and testimonies and things of what it looks like to combine your faith and your work. Now let's go do it
Yeah.
here. And I think that was
Yeah.
always the biggest win from my perspective.
Mhm.
Not that I didn't love serving the people, but I think that
Yeah.
was one thing I loved about the trips. I thought made it worth
Mhm.
it. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. That's interesting how, because you have so many desires that God has placed in your heart and so many strengths and gifts and talents. And sometimes, you say you feel it's weird, here, but I think that's kind of something I feel is kind of common for a lot of women because we have these desires in our hearts for a reason. We have these gifts, we have these talents, and yet, sometimes we feel like we're supposed to be these certain identities that people expect of us, and we're not going under those like expectations, and
Fitting
that's
the
making
mold.
us feel
Yeah.
weird, right?
Yeah.
But then when we try to do all these different things, it's not because we're trying to, like, glorify ourselves or anything, it's just that God has, like, given these desires for a reason, and we just wanna, use them or, share them, encourage others, right?
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that? Those identities that were the expectations?
Yeah, I mean, I think, yes, we're all expected to have to like kind of fit in a certain box and or to we've got
Mhm,
these certain things that we need to do. And yes, I've never been
mhm.
good at that and kind of always tried to still fight for the things that I love. But I think
Yeah.
what missions reminded me was those things keep me going, right? Like having music
Mhm.
in my life and having a change in the week, not doing this exact same thing 80 hours a week. It actually
Yeah.
lifts my energy and allows me to
Yeah.
do even more and go even farther. So
Mhm,
fighting for the things that we love, I think is actually a really good thing. It's
mhm,
hard sometimes not every not every year does everything fit in there, right?
mhm,
Not every not every season can you do everything that you
mhm.
want. But
Yeah.
if you'll fight for, making the things that are important to you fit in your life, then God can really bring them back in incredible ways that you might not have even been expecting. And I think that was such a cool thing to see. And again,
Yeah.
it gave me energy to keep going, like in a real
Mhm.
way I hadn't realized. Doing all science all day long does kind of burn me out quicker than if I
Yeah.
mix up the day. And so that was a great thing to remember. It's okay to fight to be outside of the box and
Yeah.
not do the expected sometimes. Sometimes
Mhm.
that's what God wants for you, and
Yeah.
incredible things can happen when you are willing to share who you are just honestly.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. We're created to be creative beings. And I think that creativity of God, as we see in nature, in the world around us, the earth, the universe, the, galaxies, there's so much creativity all around us. And obviously, each and every one of us is made to be creative in different ways. It may be artistic or it may be scientific, it may be technical. There's so many different avenues for that creativity to shine through. But I think we need that outlet sometimes in
Yeah,
order to be better at whatever else we're doing.
for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. And so tell me, what's a practice, rhythm, or discipline that has helped you stay grounded in faith during the hardest seasons of your career?
I do like to write, but I'd say the one of the best things was just having a journal.
Mhm,
And so that I think kept me really grounded. It was, like I said, it was me practicing honesty. So sometimes when I go back and look at it, I'm like, I was quite depressed that day, wasn't I? It's interesting to see sometimes,
mhm,
but it was a great
yeah,
way for me to be honest with myself, be honest with
mhm,
God. And then I would also just share, if something helpful or something good came up that day. If someone prayed for me, I would, write that down. And so um, I can go back and look at it on bad days or on days when it just seems like, I don't know, God is just a little bit too quiet and I kind of wonder where he went or something like that. It's good to have something to
yeah,
look back at and be able to remind myself like, oh no, these are the times that I've seen him and these are the examples of what he's done for me, not alone. So yeah, so I love having a journal and I think it was super easy during like training. It wasn't usually a daily thing, but I would make an effort
mhm,
to do it 2 or 3 times a week. And I think that was, and again, it wasn't hours of journaling. It was like 5, 10 minutes. And so that was, I
yeah,
think, quick and easy discipline to kind of keep going. So I love that.
yeah,
A couple of times, I think also just standing on other people's faith, I'd say was
mhm,
kind of what helped me most in the worst of days. There were some days when I really struggled with reading the Bible and things like that when I was sick, right after I was sick.
mhm,
And so just having like a series of sermons or like a YouTube channel that I could kind of go to and just listen to
mhm,
someone talk about, give some encouragement or something like that. That was always really
yeah.
helpful. I did a lot of 5 a.m. like Beth Moore Christian channel TV, things like that. So those were great as well.
Yeah. And do you think that is like part of how you build your kind of self awareness as a person, as a physician? And how does like that help?
Yeah, I think, yeah. So there are also a lot of
Mhm,
discussions about different patients, especially specifically hard things or,
Hmm.
days when I was just unsure of myself or whatever. There's even a couple of just like good days, like great, like just good memories. A patient drew me a picture and gave it to me today, just the simplest of
Yeah.
things that you really easily forget, I think, as well.
Yeah.
And so it's great to be able to go back and see how my confidence has changed over time, how my
Hmm.
confidence in just as you're learning and getting more confident with providing
Hmm.
care, that I think
Hmm.
becomes a little bit more obvious over the years.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, it helps me be more aware of like how I'm interacting with people, what things that patients like, and making sure I'm, again, fighting to be myself and not
Yeah.
necessarily stay in the expected box and be real and truthful with them. So, yeah, for sure.
And ending with two more questions. One is, if you could go back and give your med school self one piece of advice about integrating faith and work, what would it be? We'll
Hmm.
start with that one and then.
Okay. I think I would say something like, God is there. Start with listening, I think is the main thing that would be helpful. Like I said, I think God takes us in different directions in terms of what exactly our faith looks like. Sometimes we're evangelizing, sometimes we're praying, sometimes we're, you know, just changing the way that we interact with people. And so if you
Mhm.
listen to those small little urges that sound like they're crazy and don't make sense in that moment, they
Mhm.
come more and more frequently, and God will really just put things on your heart and allow you to start to see him even more. So just inviting him in, just taking a minute to
Mhm.
anything that you see here,
Mm.
God, that you would add to this day or to this patient's encounter, I think is a great place to start.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Inviting him in. That's good. And then what's the conversation you most want women in medicine to be having with each other right now and that your book opens the door to?
So I wrote my book. It was a couple of years of Bible studies that I did, and we always
Mhm.
did discussion based Bible studies. I know
Mhm.
that the thing in Christian circles is to get a book, and then go and individually fill out all the answers by yourself. But I think there's something so wonderful about being able to work out the difficult things with someone else and being able to
Mhm.
talk through them with someone else. So I specifically
Yeah.
wrote the book like that. It has like questions at the end of each chapter that you can just kind of discuss with someone,
Mhm.
things that are they don't really have right or wrong answers a lot of the times, but
Yeah.
like what would this look
Yeah.
like in your life, or what have you done when you face this type of situation? I think
Mhm.
we could use so much more togetherness as women in medicine, especially
Yeah.
Christian women, just all women in medicine, really.
Yeah.
It's easy to work so hard that you just plain don't have time for anything
Mhm.
else. You've got your family and you've got this and you've got these
Yeah.
expectations, but really fighting to really connect with each other better, I think is
Mhm.
such a great thing and can
Yeah.
help encourage you and help refresh you in an amazing way, and even just give you
Yeah.
ideas of how to incorporate your faith and how to see God better, even in those hard
Yeah.
places.
Yeah. Yeah. In your book, it definitely has the discussion questions and areas where you can talk and, together work through the thought processes that reading the book would bring to mind. So tell us again your website and where people can find you.
Yeah, it's ashleytauriac.com. Tauriac's kind of hard, Tauriac, but I'm out there. And then, or you can follow me on social media under that name as well. Um,
And I'll
yeah,
have all the links and everything in the show notes for people to click and easily get to.
so
But I really enjoyed the conversation, Ashley, and I really
thanks.
appreciate your time. And thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. This was wonderful.
Yeah. And Dr. Thoriak, Tauriac, thank you again. Thank you for showing us what it looks like to lead with vision, to let your faith work at work, and to find God's fingerprints even in the most ordinary, exhausting, in-between moments of this life. I want to leave our listeners today with Philippians 4:13. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. Not some things, not the easy things, all things. The 3 a.m. pages, the hard diagnosis, the mom guilt, the mission field, the in-between field, seasons, all of it, through Him. Friend, if you are in a season of pain right now, if anything in your life feels heavy, if medicine, motherhood, mission feels far away, I want to gently remind you of something we talked about today. You don't have to stay focused on the pain. As Dr. Ashley said in her book, you can look up. That's not denial, that's leadership, that's faith. Great leaders aren't built into the early, easy seasons. They're forged in the fire, sustained by a vision that is bigger than the moment they're standing in. And sometimes that vision looks like one more patient, one more bedtime story, one more trip, one more act of faithfulness in the beautiful, unglamorous, God-soaked mundane. Rest in Him, lead from that place, and remember, the mission field isn't just overseas. It's the hallway, it's the carpool line, it's the grocery store, it's wherever He has placed you today. If today's episode stirred something in you, grab Dr. Tauriac's book, In Between the Lines of Faith and Work. Links are in the show notes, and if this blessed you, please share it with another woman today who needs it. Until next time, keep healing, keep loving your people, keep sparking hope, keep answering the call. See you soon. Thank you for joining us in this episode of Medicine, Motherhood, and Missions. We hope you found inspiration, insight, and a sense of connection in the stories we shared today. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to subscribe and leave us a review. Your feedback helps us reach more listeners like you. Follow us on Instagram for updates, free downloads, and to join a community of like-minded individuals passionate about making a difference through medicine, motherhood, and mission work. Remember, you're not alone in this journey. Until next time, keep sparking hope, keep healing, keep nurturing, and keep making a difference. This is Johanna signing off from Medicine, Motherhood, and Missions. The medical opinions expressed on this podcast are for informational purposes only and should not be considered as medical advice. Always consult a licensed healthcare provider for personal medical concerns or questions. The views expressed by guests are their own and do not necessarily reflect those of